We are doing Daf Lamed Vav Lamed Aleph today. Basically, we have a discussion going on over here in a case of Suffolk, and we've had a number of cases of Suffolk, and we went through there's difference of opinion, and I suppose if we want, we can say the main players over here are Reb Meir and Reb Yossi. So let's take our mind back for a minute to the Mishnah. So in the Mishnah, we have a case where it's a Suffolk, whether the food is available during Ben Hashmashas. Is it a kosher Erev or not? So Reb Meir, it goes l'chumra, and Reb Yossi goes l'kula. So by Suffolk, if the Erev is a good Erev, Reb Meir goes l'chumra, and Reb Yossi goes l'kula. I think it's right for me to point out that we learned yesterday, after questioning that Reb Meir seems to be contradicting himself. We came to a conclusion, and I think that this works for this Amud as well, even though it doesn't mention it, that the Suffolk is based because of two witnesses. There's two witnesses saying it became Tameh, and two witnesses saying it did not become Tameh. So that was the cause of the Suffolk. Was there were two witnesses who were contradicting each other whether Ben Hashmashas it was Tameh or not. The machlekes between Reb Meir and Reb Yossi. Reb Meir goes l'chumra and Reb Yossi goes l'kula, is because Reb Meir, as we said yesterday, he holds that Tchumen is de'iraisa. So if Tchumen is de'iraisa, so therefore it's a Suffolk de'iraisa, and it's a Suffolk de'iraisa, we go l'chumra. There was a discussion, like by every time when we have sveikas. When we have sveikas, we also discuss if there's any chazakas around. Let me just say a word about the chazaka. The concept of chazaka, which we spoke about yesterday when we were speaking about today, is what's called chazaka kamaisa. And chazaka kamaisa means basically that if beforehand it was kosher or it was tameh, whichever way it is, so unless in a case of a Suffolk, the correct way forward is to assume that no change is taking place unless we know about the changes taking place. If it's a doubt whether the change is taking place, we can rely on what it was before and say that no change took place. But generally, by Chazaka, the Achronim discussed, is Chazaka a clarification of some sort, or maybe not? Maybe Chazaka is not a clarification. It's just the Torah told you that's the way you should act in such a way. So it's according to the Achronim, Chazaka does not even have to be a clarification. Maybe it's no clarification, but the Torah tells you that is the way you should pass them. There are those that say that Chazaka is some form of clarification. It's certainly not a very good form of clarification. Right. So, we have mentioned already today how the Suffolk came about in the Mishnah, because two witnesses were contradicting each other. When some say became Tameh earlier, some say became Tameh later. And we mentioned that the argument of Reb Meir and Reb Yossi is whether Tchumen is the Eraisa or the Rabbanon. And there's something else I wanted to say, which I do not recall, so we'll go. Okay, so the Gemara right now is going to deal with Rabbi Yossi. Right, yes, I remember what. There was a brisa which was mentioned, in where Reb Meir and Rabbi Yossi take the opposite ends. A case of a Suffolk de Rabbanon. There was a case of the brisa b'negea to if somebody was Tomei, and then a Suffolk whether it became Toher. So if it was Tomei and it was a suffix, whether it became Tahir, so we learned the Bryce yesterday, that if the suffix is a suffix derabanan, there's a machlekes Rameir and Rabbi Yossi. So the suffix derabanan is a machlekes of Rameir and Rabbi Yossi, and Rameir and Rabbi Yossi take the opposite views as they seem to take in the Mishnah. The suffix of the Mishnah, Rameir says you go to Chomer, Rabbi Yossi says Lakula. In that Bryce, in that Mishnah, it's also Mishnah. In that Mishnah, B'negea to the suffix of Tuma derabanan, Rabbi Yossi goes L'chumra and Rabbi Meir goes L'chumra. So it turns out, yeah. So, but again, to the fact that Rabbi Meir was contradicting himself, so we said already that, mentioned already that the Mishnah, Rabbi Meir holds Tuma deraisa, it's Sveka deraisa, that's why he goes L'chumra, and in the other Mishnah, B'negea to Tuma, it's Tuma derabanan, that's why he goes L'chumra. But now we still have the problem that Rabbi Yossi is contradicting himself. In our Mishnah, which is even if you'll say it's a Tumah derabanan, so that's why he goes L'kula. No, but in the Eruvin, even if you'll say that he holds that Eruvin is the Rabbanon, which is the reason, which would be a good reason why you go L'kula, but we see that even by Tumah derabanan, Rabbi Yossi goes L'chumra, even to the Rabbanon. So we have a contradiction of Rabbi Yossi. Kasha de Rabbi Yossi. There's going to be three answers to this stira of Rabbi Yossi against Rabbi Yossi. So the Omer Avon Bachina shine Tuma hoyel v'yesh le'ikim natayr. Eina chanami that Tuma, which we're talking about in that Brisa, is in that Mishnah. Sorry, in that Mishnah we're talking about is Tuma derabanan. With Rabbi Yossi's opinion is we should be machmir since it has a ikim and a Torah, because the din of Tuma is a deraisa din. So therefore it's a derabanan. We're talking Tuma because he got into water, Rish of Eruvin went into water, etc. Dinim which are the Tumas which only derabanan. But nevertheless, since Tuma is based, the din of Tuma is based deraisa, so therefore according to Rabbi Yossi, he should be machmir even in the case of the sun. So right. So the Gemara asks the question: Shabbos nama deraisa. Shabbos is also deraisa. So therefore, since Shabbos is deraisa, so Tchumen has an ikim and a Torah. Yeah. So Tchumen has an ikim and a Torah. So because what's the ikir? The ikir is the melacha. It's melacha of Shabbos. Well, not from lamatos melachos. Anyway, it's the isser of Shabbos. It's the isser of chil Shabbos. But it's the isser of chil Shabbos. And Shabbos min a Torah. So it has an ikim and a Torah. So the Gemara answers, "Kasav Rabbi Yossi Tchumen derabanan." Rabbi Yossi holds Tchumen derabanan. So according to the Rashi's way of learning it, so that means that what's the answer? Even in the Kasha, we knew that Tchumen is derabanan according to Rabbi Yossi, but he holds a Tchumen derabanan, and therefore we don't need to. The fact that Shabbos is min Torah is not relevant, because Tchumen has no ikr min Torah. If Tchumen would have an ikr min Torah, and then we're talking about a part of Tchumen which is derabanan, so then Rabbi Yossi would agree to be machmer. If by Tchumen, Tchumen would have an ikr min Torah, and there are some Tchumen which are only midrabanan, some Tchumen are midrabanan, some midaraisa. No, then it would be justified in saying that we should be machmer because Tchumen has the ikr min Torah. But if Tchumen does not have the ikr min Torah, it's totally midrabanan according to Rabbi Yossi. And Shabbos the ikr min Torah, that's not a problem. So that doesn't count, and we do not, and therefore we by Tchumen, Rabbi Yossi is mekel basofik, and by the Tumah, which is the ikr min Torah, he's machmer. But just to add, that Rashi says that the question is why something that's explanation from Rashi. Explanation from Rashi is if something has an ikr min Torah, so if we get used to being mekel, and that's sofik because it's the Rabban, which is justified in being mekel. But if we'll be mekel by the Rabbanon, in the end you'll be starting mekel in that whole din, and therefore you'll be mekel also in the Raisa. So if you'll be mekel by Tumah Rabbanon, you'll end up being mekel by sofik Tumah Raisa. If you mekel by sofik Tumah Rabbanon. And so therefore, the argument here is that if you're makel in Sofik Tchumen, you won't come to makel in other Malach Shabbos, because it's other Malachas. Tchumen is your Sofik. It won't. That will not cause you to be makel. Okay, that's basically what Rashi says. Okay. So that's the one answer. So this answer is that there's a difference if something has an ikim in Torah, it does not have an ikim in Torah. That the Ibai say another reason why he is makel in the Mishnah and machmir in the Mishnah of Tumah, and our Mishnah of Eruvin is makel. How did Rabbi? That here Rabbi himself actually takes a stricter view, and that you should be machmir by Sofik Derabanan, but his teacher, he said, was the one who's makel. They can name it. It says now Mishnah on Rabbi Yossi says Avtulmus Hayid. Avtulmus testified b'shem chamishas keinim shesofik erev kosher. So he's repeating the opinion of Avtulmus. If he's repeating the opinion of Avtulmus, it's not necessarily he goes like that. So therefore, there's no contradiction that the Avtulmus's opinion taka was that sofik midrabanan should makel. Mashen can Rabbi Yossi personally, he held that you should be machmer by sofik midrabanan. So that's a good drive. That it's not our mission is not his own opinion. Rabbi gives another answer to take away the contradiction for Rabbi Yossi. The reason why by Tumah his makel, by Tumah his machmer, the reason why by Tumah his machmer, because there is a chazaka over there. Over here in our Mishnah, there is no chazaka. We don't know whether it's the Erev or not. Masha'en came, or could even be in our Mishnah, there is a chazaka that in our Mishnah there is the Gemara doesn't say that, but in our Mishnah, as we'll see right in the Gemara, in our Mishnah there's actually a chazaka of a good Erev, because when he placed it down, he placed down a good Erev. The question is, it became it burned or it became tummy, whatever happened to it, so it got ruined. So actually, in our Mishnah, which is not mentioned here in this stage in the Gemara Ben Geter Rabba, it is actually a chazaka to be makel, because when you placed it there, it was okay. Masha'enken, it says, but Masha'enken, in the case of Tumah, why is Rabbi Yossi machmer? So the Rabbi Yossi machmer Tumah, because there the chazaka is lahachmer, is Tomei. Hamed Tomei al chazkosei. The question, if we remember what it said in the Mishnah B'negei Tumah, the question is whether he became tar again. He became Tomei through some in the Rabbanon which makes him. And he went to mikveh. Sofik was a good mikveh, not a good mikveh, whatever it was. So the Sofik is whether it became tar. So the chazaka is Tumah. So the Mela Hamed Tumah chazkosei. The aim Eloi Tobal say that it was not a good tefillah. Yeah. So Gemara says, one second. Under Rabbi, haven't mikvah chazkosei in all the cases, but in one of the cases over there is, so put the mikvah on the chazaka. The mikvah was a good mikvah. You don't know whether the mikvah got ruined. So the mikvah has a chazaka cheskas tara. So you have a cheskas tara to negate cheskas tumah that the person was tummy. So the Gemara says the aim eloi chasad the mikvah. So the Gemara says no. That case, that Mishnah is talking about shalinim. That Mishnah's case, there's no chazaka tara. They never ever knew whether there was enough water in the mikveh or not to be arbaim sa. They never knew. It was never measured. And when they measured it later, it didn't happen. So, but maybe it became a bit less. So, and originally it was more. So it's a suffix, but we're talking about suffix where there's no chazaka. So the only chazaka that there is over there is tumas, and that's why. So the reason why, because they're based in a suffix derabanan. So Rabbi Yossi goes according to the chazaka, and there the chazaka is tumah, and that's why he's machmir over there. Okay, here we'll actually see. I think this is a support a bit to Rabbi that the dinner which Rabbi Yossi was saying is he's going according to chazaka, because here in this we'll see after we finish with this, we'll see that there's a chazaka for it to be a kosher erev in our Mishnah. Tanya Ketzad the Omar Rabbi Yossi Sofik erev kosher. When did he say Sofik erev is kosher? So it says erev b'truma Sofik erev b'truma. If he made truma the erev Sofik, but it became tomei. So Sofim Beijim Nitmas, Sofim Nitmas. You don't know when it became Tomei. Did it become Tomei before before the Ben Hashmoshes or after Ben Hashmoshes? After it becomes dark already. So B'Shas Ben Hashmoshes, was it a good Erev or not? We don't know. So that is one of the Sveikas where he says the Erev is kosher. The Chain Beperis, this piece which we're going to learn now, is not going to be so understood. But later the Gemara will a bit later the Gemara will explain. The Gemara is going to deal with it. The Chain Beperis, if it's peris, fruits and fruits, which fruits are tevel, if you did not take truma or trumas meiser. So this the two types of tevel. The two types of it. It's tevel. If you didn't take truma from the peris, it's meiser. It's tevel. If you didn't take meiser from the peris, is also tevel, because in the meiser, and it's also chiyuv misa, because it's in the meiser there's a trumas meiser. It could even be, which we'll see later in the Gemara, another case where you have meiser. Meiser can also be considered tevel. If the meiser you've not taken the trumas meiser from it, so then it's also tevel. Yeah. So the kids are. Let's not go into too much detail. The peris, which is tevel, and sofik be'ijim nitkanu, and it's a sofik whether they were mafresh whether the mafresh truma be be'ijim by days. That means it was a good erev, because tevel is not fit for an erev. It's not edible at all to no one, and therefore it's not a good erev. Tevel is not a good erev, which we learned before. But sofik be'ijim nitkanu, whether it was the suffix is whether it was mafresh, the truma or mises and all that before the shkir, or before ben shmoshes, or suffix mechshechenit, or suffix when it was made, the mice and all that was done after that, after the night. So is who suffix erev kosher? These two cases are suffix erev, which is kosher. Right. The Gemara will soon explain the second case. Avol erev b'truma sofik tehera sofik. But if you made an erev of truma, you had truma which was a sofik, whether it's Torah or Tomei. You don't know. If you have peres, you don't know whether it's tevel or it's not tevel. So it's a sofik tevel and sofik truma, and that is what you place over there to for the erev. So it's also a sofik. But this type of sofik, where there is no chazakas of it being any good, it's just a plain suffix. Ain't there suffix erev kosher? That's not what Rabbi Yossi said. Suffix erev kosher, because no chazak. Okay, now the Gemara is going to deal with the issue which we raised just before. The Gemara is asking, why is it truma but truma? We say it's a good erev. Even though we have a suffix whether the truma became tomei or not, it's a suffix whether it became tomei. So we say it's a good erev. Why do we say? We use the principle of chazaka. We say it was a chatchil tar, the suffix. So we go into chazaka and it's tar. It's on peres, which also go according to the chazaka. Peres nami. So it follows the logic that you go according to chazaka. You don't know whether when you were mafresh it after it was dark, or before Ben Hashmoshes, so to have a time of Hamed Tevel Chazkosi. So you should put on the Chazaka that in the beginning it was Tevel, and therefore probably the change didn't take place till later. The Emel Nitkano, and say it was not it wasn't fixed in time, it was fixed later, because we have to say that the change didn't take place till eventually took place. Till we know for sure it took place. Until then, we assume it didn't take place. So the Gemara says, and you have to change the version in the Bryce. Yeah. Don't say suffix beijim nitkanot. Not the suffix is not whether it's tevel, whether the tevel you were mafresh trumas mises, not the other way around. It was good food and got mixed into it. Tevel got mixed into it, and the suffix is when did the tevel get mixed? So again, he put down the erev. It was good food. He put down the erev. It was he had taken trumas mises and everything. And what happened? Some other pears fell into it, and the other pears which fell into it, we don't know when it fell. When those pears were tevel, and so we don't know when did the tevel fall in and get mixed up into these pears. Was it from before Ben Hashmoshes? So then it's not a good erev. And so, or from after Ben Hashmoshes, that's a good erev. Something beijim nidmu or something meshechet nidmu. And so therefore it has to go to chazaka. What's a chazaka that originally when he put it down there was no He didn't. It was pairs which were already mafresh trums. It was before the other ones fell in. So therefore, you go kon chazak, and therefore it's a good data. Okay. Boy, Rav Shmuel Bar Yitzchak. So we see over here that the case of Suffolk, even though it's negates Erev, it's only Darabanan, we will follow the Chazaka over here. We'll learn Cheskes Kashrus and the Cheskes, so it's okay. Boy, Rav Shmuel Bar Yitzchak Merabun. How you now the question? How you look for now? Steak kickers. If there's two, he has two breads. Achas Tmeya, Achas Teira. There's two breads. One is the Truma Tmeya, and one is Truma Teira. It's Truma. Yeah, Truma Tmeya, you're not allowed to eat. Truma Teira, you can eat. So the Omrli, and so there's two breads, and we don't know which is which. We don't know which is the Torah, which is the Tom. And the Omar said, Irvuli b'Torah. Go and make me with the Torah, make me the Eir. The whole Makim Shehi. Whichever it is, if whichever one is Torah, that should be the Eir. And the guy went, the Shliach went, and he put down the food, and whichever one of them is the Eir, should be the Eir. Is this kosher or not? To boil the Meir, to boil the Rabbi, because the Meir is by Suffolk Erev, he's Mach, and the Rabbi is make a Suffolk Erev. So, but nevertheless, the question would be according to both to boil the Meir, the Kash, the Ad can only come, even though the Meir is Mach, even though the Meir is Mach by Suffolk Erev, but maybe here you can make it. Why? Because here for sure you have a good Erev. You don't know which one it is, never doesn't matter. But you should have a good Erev. And can come with a Meir also on the Leket Erev. When you have one bread, and you don't know whether it's Torah or Tomei. So you don't know whether you have an Erev or not. But you for sure have a good Erev. You don't know which one it is. Anyway, you don't have to eat the Erev. So as long as you have a kosher Erev, so maybe that's sufficient. As long as you have a kosher Erev, even though you're not going to eat it, so because you don't have to eat it. Yeah, we've discussed that at the length earlier in the period. A dilma, or maybe so even a mayor will be bakel over here this side. A dilma, I feel it. Rabbi who is makel by Suffolk Erev is the comment Elohos of the East the Isa the Hitayra Yodala that he knows. Even though if it was Tahir, he would know which one it is. So he doesn't know whether it became Tomei or not, but he knows which one it is that originally was Tahir, and maybe it became Tomei. He knows. So if it's Tahir, he knows which one it is. But over here, he doesn't know at all. He doesn't know which one it is. So therefore, if you don't know, if you don't know, so that if you don't know, so then it's not a good Erev. Even though for sure you have a Torah one over here, but if you don't know which is the Torah one, if you don't know which is the Torah one, which is the one which is really fit for you, that is even worse than if it's Suffolk. So the Kitzer, so on the lay, so he answered him back. This Rav Huna answered. So on the lay said to him, Ben Rabbi Ben Rameir, that it's no go inon suuda haruya mi by join the that the Erev at the very least has to be when you place it there, it has to be roy. So when you place the Erev, it has to be roy. Okay, it's true, you don't have to eat the Erev, etc. But when you place it, so b'shas placing, it has to be roy. Whatever the different opinions concerning the roy, but it has to be roy. And here, if you don't know which is the one, so it means that even by Jaim, it's not roy. Since you don't know which one, it's not roy. The kids are, so everybody will agree that it's not an Erev. And Rashi points out that everybody will agree. I mean, Rabbi Yossi and Rabbi will agree. And actually, so much so is it not an Erev that, remember, by Suffolk Erev, Rabbi Yossi went to Kula, it's a good Erev. Rabbi went L'chumra. and therefore you lost some of the distance of your. You didn't know where is your center of living on Shabbos, so you lost some distance of your walking. But here it's a bad, not an Erev, because it's not roy midgame. Therefore, the chumrah of Rameh won't apply. It's just not an Erev, and you have the distance which you had without the Erev. Just ignore it, and you have the distance of the city. And anyway. So what's the principle? That there's a principle in Erev, which we just now learned, that you need to have a Suda Reil by Jay. That at least it's just be Roy. You don't have to eat the Erev, and there's many things, but whatever level of Roy which you need, that at least somebody's able to eat it, that has to be Roy by Jay. But it's such a case when nobody's able to eat it because we don't know which it is, then it's not a Pasha Erev. Boy, it's a Rabbi asked if he said the nader, he said this bread today is choil, today Friday is choil, and tomorrow Shabbos it should be kodesh. L'mocher should be kodesh, and if it's kodesh, you can't have any benefit. For Omar, that later he said irvuli bazeh. So he said, use it for me for an erev. So if it's kodesh, you can't use it for an erev. So the question is, what is it ben hashmoshes? The question is, when does the kedusha chal? When does the kedusha begin? Now he made an erev. He said it should be kodesh tomorrow, and he also said make an erev. So maybe his intention was that make an erev whilst it's still choil, and after that it'll become kodesh. In other words, maybe his intention was that it should become an Erev. And Machar, he didn't mean Ben Hashmoshes, he meant after Ben Hashmoshes. In order that the Erev, that he meant that to allow for the Erev to take place, which will only take place if it's Chayil, then afterwards it should become Kiddush. Or did he not mean that? Or did he mean it should be Kiddush right away? What was his intention? So Mao, so Mao, that's the question. Rabbi asked Nachman, is Amalei Eruvin? He says it's a good Erev. Then he asked him again, Hayoim Kodesh Ulamachachay. If he said Hayoim Kodesh, today it should be Kodesh, this Friday it should be Kodesh, Ulamachar Shabbat should be Chay. Now, if we'll go according to his intention, and beforehand we said that that it's a good Erev, so probably the Pirush is, or Rabbi thought that the Pirush of Nachman is that we say intention is surely that to allow it to become a good Erev. So if that's the case, if we say his intention, we judge his intention, that's for sure to become a good, that he wants it to become a good Erev, and the Kodesh should not disturb to the Erev, should be either before or later. So then the other way around as well, true. He says Ayom Kodesh, and he said music for an Erev. Is Mahu, what's halacha? Is because he was questioning, because he thought there's a very good chance that that it is an Erev, because we're sure that when it said he meant it should start earlier, because in order to allow that the Erev should function. So what did Rabbi say? Ain't Erev, it's not an Erev. So he asked Maishner, what's the difference? Because Rabbi thought that it depends on his intentions, on the intention of the person who made the neder. When you eat a kur of salt, I'll tell you. If you eat a kur of salt, then I'll tell you, because he's expecting to find out himself. Yeah. So it says, Hayoim Chayil Machar Kodesh Misfeikeli Nochselik Kedusha. That the din is that since it's a suffix, what the intentions are, whatever, we don't know. So since it's a suffix, so therefore we say that the halacha is that since if you say Hayoim Chayil Machar Kodesh, so it's a suffix. So we use like similar to the principle of chazaka, and we say it remains chayil till the latest date, till after the Ben Hashmoshes. So we say misfake alone nach the kedusha. So misafik the kedusha doesn't come till after Ben Hashmoshes. Hayom kedush al. So it's a suffix. So we follow it's a suffix what the tensions are and so on. So it's therefore we follow the concept of chazaka and misfeika loy poka kedusha. I would say since it was kodesh first, so the kedusha doesn't go away till night comes. That means Ben Hashmoshes was kodesh and it's not a good area. Tanan Hassan, we learned over that login. Okay, it's another Mishnah. Login Tvul Yoim. This is a login is a keli of a lug, and it's a smaller keli, a lug. It's about whatever 400 grams or something. Yeah. So that's a shemilu min achovis shemaiser that he filled it up shemaiser tevel. He filled up the keli from a barrel which was meiser tevel. So he had a barrel of meiser, which is tevel. It wasn't meiser tevel. Means meiser rishon, which did not take trumas meiser. So the meiser is meiser, belongs to the Levi, but he has to give a tenth to the kohen. And if it didn't take, it's not mafresh it, so it's tevel. We mentioned that before. So then what Oman is said. So this login is a full yoim. This login has a tumah. So we put it in the mikveh. I has to wait till the evening for the tumah to go away completely. Now, when you put it in the mikveh, the tumah goes away. But still, it's a tful yoim. It still retains a bit of tumah. What's the bit of tumah? The bit of tumah retains is not relevant to choil. If it's choil, it doesn't. A tful yoim is not metame choil. A tful yoim is only metame truma. A tful yoim is only metame truma. So this login, he put in some, let's say, wine from the chovis. So he put in the wine from the chovis. So if the wine is chulin, it doesn't become tumah because the login is a tful yoim. It won't make it tumah. If the wine is truma, then it becomes tumah because tful yoim is a din is similar to a sheni l'tumah. A sheni l'tumah only makes a shlishi, and a shlishi is only truma. So meiser, so if it's not truma, then it does not become tumah because the login is a sheni, and you can only make a shlishi. So he said v'omar, and he said harezu. So he filled out with meiser tevel, and it said harezu trumas meiser l'shetechsher. This should be trumas meiser when it gets dark. So he's making a trumas meiser. He's being mafresh meiser now, saying he's mafresh. He puts it in the look, and it says that this vessel will be trumas meiser on all the rest of the stuff of the chavis. So this should be the trumas meiser. And when should become trumas meiser? The chetechsher when it gets dark. So dvar kayamin. So it's okay. So it's dvar kayamin, and it's not trumas meiser. It's still the whole thing is tevel. The chavis is tevel, and it's meiserishin. But the chavis is tevel. The lugan is tevel. When it comes dark, the chavis is meiserishin. The lady can eat it, and then the lugan becomes trumas meiser, and that's for the kohen. And it's going to be for the kohen, but he can't eat it because I forgot something. Yeah. So the thing is, now what happens when it gets dark? Then it becomes truma. It will be fine. Because why is he pushing it off for darkness? Why is he pushing off the shetechshech? Because when it pushes off the shetechshech because when it gets dark, but seisik chovim, the tvul yoim is not tvul yoim anymore. It becomes tarry complete. So therefore, how does he do? He takes a look and takes out the wine from the chavis, and he says it should become truma. It should become trumas meiser when it gets dark, and therefore, when it gets dark, seisik chovim, the tvul yoim becomes tired. So therefore, the truma won't become tummy. That's how he avoided the truma becoming tummy by doing this, and therefore, and so the truma the kohen can eat the truma, the Levi can eat the what's it called, the meiser, and everything is fine. If he said he took this lug, which he organized everything should be okay. It becomes choshech. When it comes to tzeitzke chovim, then this becomes truma, this becomes and everything is sorted out, and it won't become tummy. Everything is perfect. And what happens if he said to take this lug and make it an eruv for me? He said the eruv, it's not. Why? Because bein hashmoshes, it's still Teva. Ben Hashmosh is still Teva. As if it's Teva, you can't make an Erev with Teva. Omar Rava said, so we see that when does the Erev become an Erev? The Erev becomes Seif Hayoyim. The end of the day, in other words, the end of Friday. That's when it becomes the Erev. And therefore, the beginning of Ben Hashmoshes, or the end of Friday, that's when the Kniyas Erev. So when is the Kniyas Erev? The end of Friday, before Ben Hashmoshes, or the beginning of Ben Hashmoshes. So the beginning of the Ben Hashmoshes, that's when the Erev is Kaina. Since the beginning of Ben Hashmoshes, the Erev is Kaina. So therefore, then it's still Tevel. And that's why, since it's still Tevel, that's why you can't make it for an Erev. If you say that the beginning of Shabbos is Kaina, because which part of the Ben Hashmoshes? Beginning of Ben Hashmoshes is the end of Ben Hashmoshes. If you say Tchil Sayoyim, beginning of Shabbos, which means the end of Ben Hashmoshes is Kaina. If the end of Ben Hashmoshes is Kaina, so it's okay. Why is it not good Erev? He said Irvili Bezeh. And when is it Kaina Erev? The Kaina is the end of the Ben Hashmoshes. It was at the beginning of Shabbos. It's the beginning of Shabbos, the end of Ben Hashmoshes, the beginning of Shabbos. That's when it's Kaina. So, but at that moment, it's what's it called? It's Seisik Achavim, and it's Seisik Achavim, and therefore it's not tummy anymore, and it's edible. It is edible. It's not tevel anymore. So we see over here that when is the Erev come into effect? At the end of the Friday, at the beginning of the Ben Hashmoshes. So the Gemara says, you can say the Emes, that's the end of Ben Hashmoshes, comes the Erev. If the end of Ben Hashmoshes comes the Erev, so it's a good Erev. Because we're going back, it's a good Erev, because it at the end of Ben Hashmoshes, it's not Tevel anymore. So he says, no. Because Be'ena, that's the Klal we learned before, Be'ena Suda Haroim Be'edim V'lek. At the Erev, you need to have a Suda, which is Roi from Friday. That Friday, at least it should be edible. And if it's Friday or accessible or whatever, all these things. So if it's not Ruyam by Yom, therefore it's not a good Erev. So we have not proved if we have not proved either way if it's the Chil Yom or Seif Yom.